You ever hear the sky scream? No, not thunder. Not a plane breaking the sound barrier. Not even the heavy whoosh of a storm rolling in. I'm talking about the kind of scream that makes your insides twist, that rattles your teeth even when your ears say everything's quiet. The kind of sound that doesn't just hit your ears, it finds you, in your chest, your gut, your bones. Yeah, that was the day everything broke. It started like any other boring weekday. Tuesday, I think. I was on my third cup of coffee, doom scrolling through the usual mess on social media. War here, scandal there. Some celebrity eating bugs in Bali. Just the usual circus, you know? And then someone posted a video of the moon. I thought it was fake, CGI, or one of those viral deepfake things. But it was everywhere: TikTok, Reddit, even the news feed on my smart fridge. A shimmering crack running through the moon's surface, glowing like lava. A heartbeat later, the top half slid off. Just like that. Like someone took a cosmic guillotine to the thing. One clean slice, and half our moon was falling toward us, trailing light like some biblical comet. Then came the tremors. Real ones. Deep ones. Not like an earthquake. More like the planet was confused. Like Earth itself was trying to figure out what the hell just happened. And the sky turned purple. Not the soft, pastel kind. Not a sunset. This was deep, violent, stormy purple. It shimmered, too, like oil on water. And that shimmer moved like it was alive. We didn't know what it meant yet, but we were about to find out. People ran outside. Everyone. Phones in the air, filming, crying, praying, cursing. Some just stared, mouths open, like maybe if they didn't blink, none of it would be real. Then the clouds opened. Not clouds, really. Not water vapor. They were ships. Big ones. Bigger than cities. Sleek, black, silent, floating like they weighed nothing. No wings, no windows, just impossible shapes against that purple sky. And then came the first strike. It wasn't a laser. It wasn't missiles. No explosions, at least, not at first. Just this pulse, like a ripple of invisible energy tearing through the air. Everything it touched collapsed. I watched it happen from a 20-story office building in downtown Chicago. 1 second, you're sipping burnt coffee and texting your sister. Next second, you're watching an entire city block just fold inward. Not like an implosion. More like reality just gave up. Cars, people, buildings gone. Flattened, pulverized. And worse, there was this noise that came with it. The scream. Not mechanical. Not natural. It didn't come from the ships. It came from inside your head. You didn't hear it. You felt it. Some people dropped dead on the spot. Others clawed at their ears until they bled. One guy next to me jumped through a window without saying a word. Later, scientists gave it a name: psychoacoustic neural dissonance. A fancy way of saying it messes with your brain's firmware. But we just called it what it was: terror. Weaponized. We were under attack. Not by machines. Not by greedy aliens wanting our water or land or whatever sci-fi trope you're used to. No. These bastards weren't here to take anything. They were here to erase us. I remember running. No plan. No idea where to go. Just this primal urge to move. To survive. Glass was falling from skyscrapers. Fires were blooming everywhere. Smoke rolled down the streets like a living thing. And then I saw one of them. Tall. Slender. Floating a foot above the pavement like they were too good to walk. Armor like polished obsidian. Smooth and jagged at the same time. No eyes. No face. Just these glowing slits. Red, vertical, angry. It was watching a man cry over his son's body, just standing there, observing, like a scientist peering through a microscope. And then it raised a hand, not a gesture, just a twitch. That's all it took. And the man disintegrated. No fire, no blood, just ash scattered on the wind. That's when I knew. This wasn't war. This was a purge. I ducked into the ruins of a parking garage. My shirt was half burned. My arm was bleeding. And I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the gun I found next to a dead cop. .38 revolver. 6 bullets. And I was alone. Or so I thought. Then I heard footsteps. Human ones. Scrambling. A girl, 8, maybe 9, running toward me, barefoot, face streaked with dirt and blood. Behind her, another one of those floating monsters. And it was raising its hand. I didn't think. I didn't aim. I just stepped out of cover and fired. Crack. The bullet hit it in the face, or where I assumed the face was. The thing jerked back, made a noise that sounded like metal tearing paper. It didn't die, but it flinched. That's important, because in that second, I saw something surprise. It didn't expect to be hurt, not by something so small, so human. I fired again, and again. I emptied the whole damn thing. and I screamed while I did it. Not because I was brave, not because I was angry, because I was scared, and I needed that girl to live more than I needed to survive. And somehow, that mattered. The alien backed off, flickered, and vanished in a shimmer of purple static. She lived. We both did. That night, we crawled into the basement of a crushed apartment complex and hid. No lights, no phones, just our breath and the rumble of the world dying above us. And in the dark, I whispered to her, "They bleed." She didn't answer, just curled into my side and cried. But I said it again. They bleed, because that meant they weren't gods. They weren't invincible. They could be killed. And that meant we had a chance. A stupid, impossible, long-shot chance. But when humanity's back is against the wall, that's when we do the impossible. We didn't know it yet. But across the world, people were doing the same thing. Shooting back, surviving, digging in. We didn't have armies anymore. Or governments. Hell, we barely had cities. But we had rage. We had grit. We had nothing left to lose. And you know what? That makes us the most dangerous species in the universe. You know that saying, when there's nothing left to burn, you set yourself on fire? Yeah, that's what the deadline was. No uniforms, no ranks, no politics, just a mess of angry, ragged, half-mad survivors with guns, duct tape, and vengeance where their hearts used to be. We weren't soldiers. We were what was left. And when the world fell, we didn't bury our dead. We loaded their weapons. It started 6 days after the sky screamed. Most cities were gone, not just bombed, vaporized, like they were never there. Whole coast vanished. Governments, radio silent. Satellites turned to dust. But pockets of life clung on like roaches in the cracks. Chicago, what's left of it, became one of those pockets, not because it was safe, because it was angry. There was something about that city. Steel in its bones, grime in its blood. It had already survived a fire once. Remember? Back in the 1800s. This time, it just lit one of its own. We found each other in the wreckage. There was Mateo, ex-Marine, jaw like a cinder block, always chewing on an unlit cigar like the world still owed him a smoke. He never talked much, but when he did, everyone shut up and listened. Then there was Rena, skinny, twitchy, sharp as barbed wire, hacker turned saboteur. She built IEDs out of old blenders and toaster ovens. I once saw her take down a scout drone using a coat hanger and a potato battery. Swear to God. And me? I didn't belong. Not really. No military. No training. Just a guy who got lucky with 6 bullets and a bad attitude. But Mateo took one look at me, handed me a shotgun, and said, "If you're still breathing, you're in." That was it. No oath. No flag. Just the fire. We started small. Ambitious. Hit-and-run stuff. They thought we were bugs. Harmless. Scattering in the rubble. Squeaking when stepped on. But humans? We're not bugs. We're wolves. We learn. We adapt. And when you kick us into the dirt, we remember. We started figuring them out. Vadrith armor? Weak spots behind the knees. That floating thing they do? Interference screws with it. Hit them with microwaves or magnetic bursts and they drop like rocks. Rena cooked up a dish gun, an old satellite dish loaded with car batteries and radio junk. Fired it from a rooftop in the loop and fried a whole patrol midair. They fell like falling angels. Hit the ground and cracked like statues. We looted everything we could. Their weapons were weird. Organic. Like they were grown, not built. Some of them screamed when you touched them. Others bonded to your skin. Creepy as hell. But if it killed them, we used it. Mateo called it scrap theology. You worship what saves you, even if it's alien. Word spread fast. Other survivors started crawling toward the fire. Stragglers, wounded, orphans with grenades in their backpacks, old ladies with sniper rifles, junkies who'd cleaned up because killing aliens gave them a better high. We didn't turn anyone away. If you could shoot, you shot. If you could run, you ran. If you could cook, you cooked. Hell, even a guy with one leg became our best scout. Rolled around on a stolen Vadrith hoverboard. Called himself Ghost. By week 3, we had a name. Deadline. Because when the Vadrith advanced through the ruins, we were the last stop. The line they weren't supposed to cross. And if they did, we made damn sure they regretted it. But here's the truth they don't tell in war stories. You don't feel brave. You don't wake up every day thinking, I'm humanity's last hope. You wake up wondering if today's the day your leg gets vaporized. If your name gets painted on a wall in blood. If that cough Rena has means she's dying from exposure or alien plague, or just plain old Chicago air. And when it gets quiet at night, when the fires burn low and the city stops shaking, that's when it really hits you. You're not just fighting for survival anymore. You're fighting because if you stop, They win, and they're not allowed to win. I remember one night in particular. It was raining, acidic stuff, burned through jackets and left welts on your skin, but we sat out in it anyway. No cover, just the dead line huddled in a ruined cathedral, passing around a can of beans like communion wine. Rena was drawing something in the ash with a stick. Plans. She was always making plans. Bomb routes, supply chains, traps that turned an alley into a meat grinder. Mateo sat across from me, staring into the flames. You ever think about before? I asked. He nodded, slow. Every day. It's what makes this real. What do you miss the most? He didn't blink. Losing. What? Losing. At something that didn't matter. Poker. Softball. Marriage. He chuckled. It sounded like gravel in a blender. Back then, losing meant sleeping on the couch. Now, it means we're extinct. I sat there for a long time, just letting that sink in. Because he was right. We were outnumbered, outgunned. Our cities were dust. Our leaders dead. Our future hanging on the rusted edge of a stolen knife. And still, somehow, we were winning small battles. And that meant something. The Vaedrith started changing tactics. They began sending hunters, not the usual floaters. These were bigger, meaner, armored like tanks and fast like nightmares. One of them tore through our southern outpost in 20 minutes. 15 people gone. We didn't even get to bury them. Mateo said it was time to hit back harder. Rena, always one step ahead, nodded and said, let's burn the nest. See, we'd found one of their staging areas. A tower, half-grown, half-built. Looked like a wasp nest made of obsidian and screams. Vaedrith tech glowed inside it like veins under skin. They were spawning more of those hunters there, breeding death. So we hit it, all of us, every fighter we had. We called it the burn line. We loaded old trucks with gas canisters, buried bombs in sewer lines, wired detonators into traffic lights. The plan was simple. Get in, blow it up, die loud. And we did. God, we did. I still see the moment we breached the outer ring. Rena on the comms, cackling like a demon. Mateo charging through a wall with a rocket launcher on each shoulder like some war god from a forgotten age. They swarmed us. Energy blades, drones, psychic blasts that made your nose bleed and your brain hiccup. But we pushed forward because we had nothing left to lose. Because we had to win. I reached the core. I saw it. A Vaedrith birthing chamber. Rows of eggs. Pulsing. Growing. I planted the last charge, looked up, and saw 3 of them floating there. No weapons. Just watching. Like they were curious. Like we were some strange animal that learned how to bite back. So I flipped them off, hit the button, and screamed. We died loud. The explosion lit up the skyline like a second sunrise. The whole tower collapsed in on itself. And for the first time since the sky turned purple, we heard them scream. Not in our heads. Out loud. They felt pain. They felt loss. And that meant they could feel fear. We lost half our fighters that day, but the line held. And from the ashes of that tower, something else rose. Not just survivors. Warriors. Not just rebels. A resistance. They called us savages. A virus. A plague. But we had a name now. We were the Sons of Ruin, and our story was just getting started. There's a kind of silence that comes after fire. Not peace. Not calm. Just absence. Like the world is holding its breath, waiting to see if you're still alive. That's what Tokyo felt like after the Vaedrith came through. Not the Tokyo we all knew. Neon skylines, busy streets, ramen stalls on every corner. No. This was a graveyard dressed like a city. Steel bones twisted into knots. Skyscrapers burned hollow. Roads cracked open like old scars. And everywhere the ash, piled in drifts, thick as snow, soft as guilt. We touched down at dawn, on the edge of the Shinjuku ruins, riding a hacked Vaedrith dropship stitched together with stolen parts and a whole lot of luck. Rena was flying it like it owed her money. I was in the back, holding onto the wall with white knuckles and trying not to puke. Mateo stood by the door, shotgun on his shoulder, calm as a statue. He never flinched anymore, just chewed that half-dead cigar and waited for hell to start. And oh, it started. The mission was simple, if you ignored the suicidal part. Tokyo had a Vaedrith black site buried beneath it, some kind of hive node. We weren't sure if it was a command center, a prison, or a biolab. All we knew was this. Every time we hit a patrol or killed one of their commanders, data packets zipped back to Tokyo like bees returning to a nest. So we were going to burn the nest. First thing that hit us? The rain. It came down thick and black, like oil and ash had a baby. Stuck to your clothes, stung your eyes, burned your throat like cheap whiskey. Rena called it death drizzle. I called it a bad sign. The Vadrith loved the ray. Their drones moved slicker in it. Their vision worked better. Us. We were blind, coughing, slipping, but we kept moving. 12 of us, deadlines best, scattered through the ruins like shadows with teeth. We didn't speak much. Not anymore. When the world ends, silence becomes sacred. Every noise could mean death. Then a whir. Rena hissed into the comms. Drone. 6 o'clock. Cloaked. Mateo didn't even pause. Raised his rifle. Crack. And the thing dropped out of the air like a stone. Hit the concrete, sparking and twitching. That'll wake him, I said. Mateo shrugged. Good. I hate waiting. They came fast. Not foot soldiers. Not floaters. These were stalkers. Lean. Fast. Quad-limbed. All bone-white armor and glowing blades for arms. You didn't see them. You felt them. Like cold breath on your neck right before it bites. One pounced on Juno, ex-firefighter. Toughest woman I ever met, and tore into her like tissue. She screamed once. Just once. Then she vanished beneath a heap of flashing limbs and red mist. We fought like animals. No formations. No tactics. Just rage and instinct and screams echoing off the hollowed-out buildings. I remember stabbing one in the throat with a broken rebar, watching black ichor spray across my visor. It tried to scream, but I twisted the metal and shoved it deeper. Not today, I growled, and it dropped. Behind me, Rena lobbed an EMP mine into a collapsing metro station. The pulse exploded with a high-pitched whine, and 6 drones blinked out of the sky like dying stars. We moved. Fast. We had to. Tokyo wasn't a battlefield. It was a maze. Twisting alleys, half-submerged tunnels, traps made from old power lines and skeletal debris. It felt alive, like the city itself wanted to eat us. But we had one edge. We knew how to play dirty. See, the Vadrith fight clean, precise, controlled. They don't expect chaos. They don't understand it. So that's what we gave them. Mateo rigged IEDs into vending machines. Rena turned a sewer grate into a pressure trap. I jury-rigged a flame trap from an old ramen cart and a jug of kerosene. Every corner we turned, something exploded. And they started backing off. Not running. Just pausing. Recalculating. You could feel it. They weren't scared. Not yet. But they were confused. We finally reached the node. Buried deep in the old Tokyo subway system, beneath a collapsed train depot and a twisted knot of concrete. It didn't look like tech. It looked organic, like someone had planted a heart in the dirt, and it had grown too big, too fast. It pulsed. A low, bassy hum, almost like a heartbeat. Glowing veins crawled along the walls, feeding into a central pod wrapped in black flesh metal. Rena whispered, "Looks like a tumor." Mateo spat. "Then let's cut it out." We placed the charges. 12 of them. Enough to bring the whole station down. Node and all. But as we were arming the last one, they arrived. Wardens. I hate that word. Sounds noble. They weren't. These things were monsters, 10 feet tall, plated like tanks, with shields that bent light around them and cannons that sounded like thunder cracking open a skull. One stepped forward, raised its weapon. Time slowed. Rena jumped in front of me, screaming, "Go." I didn't have time to stop her. The blast hit. She was gone before she hit the floor. Just ash. Just like that little girl's father back in Chicago. I lost it. I don't remember screaming, but my throat was raw for hours after. I grabbed a pipe bomb, shoved it into the node's pulsating core, and dove behind cover. Boom. The heart flinched. Sparks flew. But it wasn't dead yet. We had to finish the job. Mateo charged the warden head-on, laughing like a lunatic, dodging blasts by inches. He slid under its legs, jammed a grenade between its armor plates, and shouted, "Tell hell I said hi." Boom. He didn't make it out, but he took the warden with him. I was alone now. The others were dead. The charges were armed. I was bleeding from somewhere under my ribs, lungs burning, heart punching holes in my chest. And then I heard the drone swarm. Hundreds of them. Black wings blotting out the hallway behind me. Their eyes glowing like coals. No way out. So I did the only thing I could. I hit record, pulled out my comms, flipped it on, and started broadcasting. "This is Ghost One. Nodes wired. They killed Rena. Mateo's gone. But we hit them. We hit them hard. If you can hear this, know this." I paused. The drones were getting closer. I could feel their heat. "We're still here. We're not done. And if they want Earth, they're gonna have to bleed for it." I smiled. Then I hit the detonator. The explosion cracked the Earth in two. Tunnels collapsed. Veins snapped. The node screamed, an unholy, mechanical howl that echoed all the way to the surface. People miles away said the sky shivered. And the swarm? Gone. Wiped out in a blink. Somehow, I lived. I woke up 2 days later in a hospital camp outside Osaka. Half my ribs broken, burns down my back, but I was breathing. They called me the burned ghost, said my comms message went global, said it gave people hope. I didn't care about that. I just wanted to know one thing. Did it hurt them? And the medic nodded. They screamed, she whispered. They screamed. That's when I smiled for real. Because in all their power, their perfect tech, their smug little war, they never expected us to fight like this. With dirt under our nails, with ghosts in our eyes, with matches in our mouths and gasoline in our hearts. We didn't win the war that day, but we made them feel it. We made them bleed. And that's where winning starts. There's a point in every apocalypse where the panic runs out. People scream, they run, they fight, they break, but eventually, they settle into the silence, the numb, the gray of survival. And then something else creeps in. Hope, not the loud, heroic kind. I'm talking about the stubborn kind, quiet, heavy. It slips through the cracks like smoke, refuses to die, even when everything else already has. That's what came after Tokyo. After we blew the node and buried half the Vadrith command chain in fire and steel, something shifted. The world didn't fix itself. Hell, most of it was still burning. But for the first time since the sky went purple, we didn't feel alone. We weren't just survivors anymore. We were a problem. And Earth? Earth was waking up. The movement didn't have a name at first. Just whispers over broken radios and repurposed satellites. Something's happening in the Rockies. Europe's regrouping. Africa never stopped fighting. People started picking up the pieces. Scattered, starving, bleeding, but alive. And under all that ash and ruin, something was still breathing, still beating. We just had to dig deep enough to find it. It started in Iceland, which, honestly, tracks. Bunch of stubborn Viking descendants sitting on geothermal gold and more sheep than people. They didn't get hit as hard. Maybe the Vadrith figured the island wasn't worth the effort. Big mistake. Iceland became the first true rally point. They called it Hearthbase 1, a fully off-grid fortress powered by magma, stocked with old NATO caches and stubborn old men who still believed in freedom. They broadcast a signal. Short, simple, honest. Earth lives. That was it. 2 words. But man, they hit like a fist to the chest. From there, the world started connecting itself again. Not with governments, not with flags, with people. Little underground nodes linking up through the junk of the old world. Rusty antennas on bombed-out rooftops. Morse code blinking across the Pacific. We called it the backbone. It wasn't fancy. Half the time, the signal was crap, but it worked. It let survivors talk, plan, unite. No one asked for permission. We just built it. Because if there's one thing humans do better than anyone else, it's build empires out of rubble. I was in what used to be Denver when it started coming together. The mountains had protected a lot of the city from orbital strikes, but what was left wasn't pretty. Downtown was a ghost town of melted glass and twisted steel. But underneath it? Underneath it was Grid 9, one of the old U.S. continuity bunkers, hidden for decades, full of canned food, Cold War tech, and one cranky general who survived by eating beans and reading Tom Clancy novels. He opened the gates to us like a pissed-off hermit being handed a reason to care again. And once we got in, we did what humans always do in caves. We made fire. Rena would have loved it. She would have turned that place into a death trap Disneyland. But even without her, we got to work. We fixed the power, wired up solar panels, repaired the comm station with duct tape and old PlayStation parts, hooked up with Hearthbase, reached out to Paris Bunker, to Cairo Ridge, to the Lagos Freehold. It was messy, slow, frustrating, but every time that static turned into a voice, you felt the world getting smaller, tighter, like bones knitting back together. We weren't whole, but we were healing. Now, don't get me wrong. This wasn't some shining utopia forming out of the ashes. We were still half feral. People were still starving, still freezing, still burying kids and praying to whatever god still had signal. But we had each other. And we had one more thing. The manifesto. Nobody knows who wrote it. It just showed up one day, broadcast over every resistance frequency like gospel carved into lightning. It didn't have rules, just truth. We are the children of Earth, born in fire, raised in ruin. We are not clean. We are not kind. But we endure. We build. We burn. We bite back. You came to silence us, but we do not die quiet. I remember hearing it for the first time, sitting in that bunker, bleeding from a busted rib, eating cold beans out of a tin, and crying, not because it was sad, because it sounded like us, raw, ugly, beautiful, and undefeated. That was the moment we became more than scattered pockets of resistance. We became a species with teeth again. We built sanctuaries in old subway lines, trained fighters in the ruins of football stadiums, converted schools into war factories, made armor from scrap, weapons from memory, and dreams from the ashes. We stopped surviving and started organizing. Some places rose faster than others. The Red Wall in what used to be Berlin, an urban fortress made from shipping containers, old tanks, and pure spite. Their leader, Ilsa Brandt, used to be a history teacher. Now she commanded 5,000 soldiers in patched uniforms and laser-scavenged rifles. The Kalahari Vultures, African freedom fighters on solar bikes who harassed Vadrith's supply lines like ghosts in the dunes, led by a blind ex-surgeon named David Ngova who swore by rhythm, not sight. The Mumbai Circle underground networks using stolen alien tech to build the first human Vadrith hybrid weapons. They were weird, brilliant. Half of them were kids. All of them terrified me in the best way. We weren't the same anymore, but we were together. And the Vadrith? They noticed. They started pulling back from the fringe, started sending bigger ships, heavier patrols, psychic broadcasts that blanketed entire continents in fear. But it didn't work like it used to. You know why? Because fear stops working when you've got something to fight for. And now, we did. Each other. The bones of nations had been shattered, but bones heal stronger after they break. One night, a kid named Amos, barely 13, scrappy, missing 2 fingers, ran into Grid 9 holding a broken radio. I caught something, he said, breathless. We gathered around, adjusting dials, praying for more than static, and then we heard it. Repeat. Requesting coordination on Sector 7. Strike team approaching Forge Prime. We are engaged. This is Proteus calling all Earthborn. Repeat. We are fighting on the moon. The moon. Our moon. Someone made it up there. Someone was still fighting, and they were calling us. You could feel it in the room. The way spines straightened, eyes lit up, that raw buzz of belief coming back into our veins like a shot of lightning. Mateo was gone. Rena too. So many of us were. But their fire? It was still burning. In every bunker, every alley, every resistance cell across Earth. We weren't done. Not by a long shot. The Vadrith thought they'd shattered humanity. They didn't realize. They'd only scattered the embers. And now? Now we were coming back. Hotter, brighter, and ready to burn their world to the ground. Sometimes, the future is hidden in the past, buried beneath rust, forgotten in vaults, written in dust. And when everything burns, when the sky is ash and hope runs thin, you go digging, not because you want to, because you have to. It started with a map, old paper, yellowed, fragile like old skin, found inside a dead librarian's satchel in the ruins of DC, charred bones, melted steel, and a miracle that somehow survived the end of the world. Hand-drawn, meticulous, marked in red ink like it meant something. At the top, just 4 words scrawled in shaky handwriting. Project Thunderbarrel. Do not open. So naturally, we opened it. Because we're human. That's what we do. We followed the trail across the spine of the Appalachians, weaving through broken towns and radioactive shadows, hunted by drone scouts and low-orbit sensors that sniffed out human heat signatures like bloodhounds from hell. We called it the Cold March. 18 of us started. Only 9 made it to the vault. Every step forward felt like chewing glass. But when you've lost everything, you stop caring about the bleeding. You just walk. The vault was buried beneath what used to be an old NORAD outpost. Steel doors, 20 feet thick, rusty, groaning, but intact. We cracked it open with thermite and prayer. The smell that came out, cold, ancient, dust and oil and secrets, like opening a tomb. Inside, it wasn't what we expected. There were no mechs, no doomsday cannons, no super soldiers frozen in cryo-sleep. Just a room full of crates, stamped with faded logos and old flags. USA, USSR, NATO, even a few Chinese ones. And silence. Thick, sacred silence. Mateo would have hated it. He liked things that made noise. But for me, that moment felt holy. Like we weren't alone anymore. Like the ghosts of old wars were watching us, waiting to see if we were still worth saving. We cracked the first crate. Inside, a railgun the size of a motorcycle. Still loaded, still humming. Designed to fire hypervelocity slugs through tanks at Mach 7. They called it the Lung Puncher. Second crate? EMP grenades, wrapped in lead foil and notes from engineers long dead. Handwritten instructions on how to disable extraplanetary threats. Third crate? A prototype armor suit. Exoskeletal. Ugly. Heavy. Beautiful. Dubbed Atlas Skin. Only 3 were ever built. We found 2. Turns out, The Cold War never ended. It just went underground, quiet, secret. They were building weapons for a war they never got to fight. And now, that war was ours. We hauled it all out piece by piece. Took us days. Had to fight off a Vadrith scout patrol that stumbled on us halfway through. 3 drones, 2 walkers, 1 psychic brute that turned our medic's brain to jelly before we put it down with a stolen plasma javelin to the throat. Cost us 2 more lives. But we got the gear, and we got out. Back at Grid 9, we laid it all out like sacred relics. Engineers wept when they saw it. Fighters whispered like it was holy. We weren't just playing scavenger anymore. We had old teeth now. That was the start of the Echo teams. Special units kitted out in the ancient tech of a dead century. They looked ridiculous at first, bulky, overbuilt, all sharp edges and glowing cores, but they moved like gods. First field test? South of what used to be Boston. A Vadrith crawler had set up shop in the ruins' long-range tower, pumping out mind-scrambling interference that kept resistance comms offline for miles. 10 Echo soldiers went in. 3 came out. But the crawler? Gone. Leveled. Burned. Silent. I remember watching the footage. One soldier, dog-ate, charging a walker under suppressive fire. His railgun jammed mid-sprint. So he dropped it, tore the walker's leg off, and beat it to death with its own limb. No training. No prep. Just rage. And borrowed firepower. It was the first time we realized humanity's extinction wasn't scheduled. It was going to have to be earned. But it wasn't just weapons we unearthed. We found plans, blueprints, projects never finished, designs that had been mothballed for decades, considered too dangerous, too unstable, too insane to ever greenlight. One of them, the Bastion engine, an experimental generator that could power an entire city or melt one, depending on which switch you flipped. We didn't understand half of it, but the Lagos Freehold did. Their engineers reverse-engineered the core and built the first working prototype in a scavenged stadium under open sky. 3 weeks later, that stadium became the heart of Earth's first shielded command post. Vadrith attacks melted on contact. Psychic interference? Gone. Drones dropped dead midair. Just like that, Earth had a pulse again. And the Vadrith? They started listening, because we were doing something they didn't expect. We were catching up, fast. They thought wiping out our cities would erase us. They didn't realize our strength was never in the skyscrapers, or the satellites, or the tech. It was in our memory, our insistence on remembering, on building legacies into concrete, leaving warnings in journals, marking vaults with ink and fear and the desperate hope that someone might find it someday. And now, we were that someone. The backbone lit up with chatter. Nodes from all over the globe started reporting new digs, bunkers, weapons, old tech coming online again. Like the planet itself was coughing up its own immune system. Some called it coincidence. Others called it fate. Me? I think it was Earth saying, I'm not done yet. And maybe it wasn't just Earth. Maybe it was us. The us before all this. The engineers. The paranoids. The cold warriors who built all this for enemies they couldn't see. They thought they were preparing for each other. But what they really did was prepare for us. For this war. For this moment. We started naming them. The recovered weapons. The ancient tech. Like they were family. Widowmaker, a hand cannon built from submarine-grade alloys, punches through Vadrith armor like butter. Frostlock, cryogrenade that flash freezes Vadrith bioconstructs mid-strike. Hades' spine, rail-launched spear designed to crack carrier-class hulls. Fired once, hit a mothership, cut it in half. We weren't just hitting back anymore. We were sending messages. Big, loud, angry messages. And every time we did, the Vadrith flinched. One night, sitting around a fire in Grid 9, a kid asked me, why did they build all this? Back then, if they weren't fighting aliens? And I didn't know how to answer at first, because the truth was, they built it out of fear. Fear of nukes, of each other, of the future. But somehow, that fear became our salvation. So I told him, they built it because they were afraid, and we're using it because we refused to be. He nodded, didn't say anything else, just stared into the flames and smiled. That's when I realized something. The Vadrith had better tech, better ships, better soldiers, but they didn't have history. They didn't have centuries of war stories and dirty tricks and desperate brilliance scribbled in notebooks beneath flickering light. They didn't have echoes. We did, and we were finally listening. Let me tell you something up front. Humans were never meant to fly. Oh sure, we figured out planes, rockets, shuttle launches, but that was tech pushing us skyward. Our souls? They were always buried in dirt, in mud, in blood. So when they told me we were going up there, past the stratosphere, beyond the smoke and ozone and broken satellites, I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I finally realized we were about to punch a god in the face. It wasn't just an attack, it was a statement. For the first time since the Vadrith had glassed our skies and painted Earth's bones with fire, we weren't reacting. We were invading. Their forge station, Prime Anvil, wasn't just a factory. It was where they built their war machines, biometal constructs, drone fleets, brain computers that read thoughts before you even finished having them. And it floated there, just beyond Earth's reach, mocking us, shining like a second moon. Well, we reached. It started with a ship, a Frankenstein miracle named the Korra, half Earth tech, half Vadrith scrap, all guts and desperation. The Mumbai Circle built it in secret, using stolen core drives and human instinct. She wasn't pretty. She groaned when she moved. She leaked radiation like a coffee-stained teapot. But she flew, and sometimes that's all that matters. Echo team boarded first, 5 of us. Me, Cass, our sniper and moral compass. Gray, our demolitions expert with a twitchy eye and a mean laugh. Toma, silent, massive, wrapped in prototype exo armor that made him look like a statue carved from war itself. And Ash, our pilot, tiny, bald, humming old pop songs under her breath, said she was scared of elevators, but not of space. Go figure. We launched at midnight. No countdown, no cheers, just a deep hum, a rattling hull, and a view of Earth shrinking beneath us like a dying memory. Ash whispered through the comms, "All right, gods, let's see if you bleed." The trip was smooth, until it wasn't. Halfway there, the station's defense grid woke up. For hunter-killer drones screamed out of the black, plasma trails cutting across the void. Ash screamed, "Hold on." We all held on. The Korra flipped, spun, jerked like a living thing. I slammed into a wall hard enough to see stars before we got there. Cass fired through the whole window like it was a damn carnival game. One drone spiraled out and exploded in a burst of green fire. Gray launched a decoy pod made from scrap and hope. 2 more drones took the bait and chased it into the dark. The last one? Toma stepped into the airlock, tethered himself, and walked out in 0G carrying a harpoon gun. He speared it through the eye, didn't say a word, just reeled it in, climbed back in, and sat down again like it was lunch break. We docked a minute later. The anvil loomed before us, obsidian black, churning with purple light, shaped like a scarab the size of Manhattan. Ash sealed the hatch, turned to me, and said, "We're inside their house now. Wipe your feet." The inside was worse. No lights, no gravity, just organic walls that pulsed with something alive. The whole place breathed. You could feel it in your chest, like stepping inside a lung. Gray whispered, "This place smells like burnt teeth." He wasn't wrong. It smelled like rot and electricity and things that had never seen a sunrise. But we moved forward, because that's what humans do. We go forward, even when everything's screaming at us to go back. The forge core was deep inside, at the heart of the beast. Our job was simple. Plant the warhead, blow the core, run like hell. What could go wrong? Everything. Everything could go wrong. The first ambush hit us in the atrium. Wide open space full of floating platforms, biotubes, and something that looked way too much like a ribcage. 3 Vadrith guardians drifted out of the dark. Tall, elegant, deadly. They didn't float like drones. They glided, like dancers. One of them locked eyes with me. No face, just a shimmer of thought. And in my skull, I heard it speak. "You are made of rot and fury. Why do you persist?" I raised my rifle. "Because you gave us no choice." Then I pulled the trigger. Cass dropped the second one mid-spin. Gray took the third down with a micromine to the gut. The explosion made the whole atrium twitch. We kept moving, past what looked like a cathedral of bone and circuitry, past chambers where Vadrith minds flickered like fireflies trapped in jars, past a room where a dozen human corpses floated in a stasis field, still breathing. We didn't stop to cry, but we didn't forget either. At the forge core, the air changed. If you can call it air in space. Gravity snapped on. Lights pulsed red. The room spun like a turbine made of stone and lightning. The core itself was a sphere, floating, wrapped in plasma tendrils, guarded by something massive. A prime form, part machine, part thought. Taller than any mech we'd ever seen. No face, just a crown of living metal and a voice that burrowed inside you. It spoke without words, but we understood. It said, "This is our sanctum. You do not belong." And we answered the only way we knew how. We fought. Toma went in first, took a direct plasma strike to the chest, didn't even slow down, slammed the prime form with enough force to crack the floor. Gray launched every mine he had. Cass laid down cover fire. I got close enough to plant the warhead. Then the pry form screamed. The kind of scream that made your soul want to rip itself out of your body and hide. It flung Toma across the room. His armor cracked. Blood floated in beads. I rushed in, slamming a shock spike into its flank. Cass shot its spine. Grey dove under it and planted a charge on its knee. Then Ash's voice crackled over comms. Guys, I just pissed off the whole station. You've got about 90 seconds before this place eats you. I looked at the warhead. The countdown blinked. 1 minute and 30 seconds. Cass was limping. Grey was bleeding from the ears. Toma wasn't moving. Time to go, I said. But Cass just smiled. Go. I blinked. What? She reached into her pack, pulled out a second detonator. A manual override. I'll stay. Finish it up close. I shook my head. No. No way. Go. Damn it. I froze. And then she kissed my helmet. You owe me a drink. I grabbed Grey, dragged him toward the exit. Ash screamed over the comms. Where's Cass? She's buying us time. Damn it. The Cora was already heating up. Ash had the engines primed. The moment we sealed the hatch, she hit launch. We were gone. Seconds later, the anvil bloomed like a flower of fire. A silent detonation in the black. Glorious. Terrifying. Beautiful. The Vaedrith lost their forge that night. And Cass, she became a legend. Back on Earth, the signal went out. Anvil destroyed. Pryform dead. Earth still breathes. They called it the first sky kill. The day humans stopped being prey. The day we proved we didn't just survive. We evolved. We buried Cass the only way we could. A transmission. A song. Her name etched into the ship's hull. Stories passed around fires. Tattoos inked in old blood. Because legends don't need graves. They need remembering. You want to know the truth? We didn't win the war that day, but we broke something in the Vaedrith. Some illusion. Some story they'd been telling themselves. That Earth was weak. That we were scattered. Broken. Lost. Now they knew. We had teeth. We had ships. We had wrath. And most importantly, we had nothing left to lose. You ever poke a bear? Not just any bear. I mean the kind that's been caged too long. Beaten. Starved. Taught to fear you. And then, one day, it bites back. You don't get silence after that. You get blood. That's what happened after we blew up Prime Anvil. We expected a response. Hell, we wanted one. Thought maybe they'd retreat. Maybe they'd rethink their campaign. Maybe they'd finally understand. We weren't prey anymore. What we got was worse. It started with the blackout. No warning. No EMP spike. No flicker on the scanners. Just nothing. Whole cities went dark in the middle of the day. Cairo, Berlin, New Johannesburg, the Lagos Freehold. All went quiet. No signals. No broadcasts. Just radio silence so complete it felt like the earth itself forgot how to scream. Then came the fog. Gray. Cold. Heavy as sin. It rolled over mountain ranges and poured through valleys like it had a mind of its own. It wasn't natural. It wasn't weather. It was designed. We didn't know it at first. But deep inside that fog, they were watching. We lost 39 outposts in 72 hours. No firefights. No explosions. Just gone. Teams sent to investigate found gear still warm. Meals half-eaten. Blood trails leading nowhere. Like the people had been erased out of time. That's when the fear came back. The kind that crawls under your skin and builds a little home in your chest. The kind we thought we'd buried under grit and fire. We thought the Vaedrith had thrown everything at us already. Drones, walkers, psychics, even that prime form thing on the forge station. But we were wrong. That was just their front line. Their foot soldiers. Now they were sending the things they kept in cages. The first confirmed sighting came from a resistance camp in northern Canada. Snowy, remote, off-grid. They'd held the line through everything: freezing storms, airstrikes, starvation. But not this. A survivor stumbled out of the woods 3 days later, barefoot and half-frozen, skin peeling, eyes wide and red from crying. She kept repeating one phrase over and over. It wore my brother's face. We named the mirrors, creatures that copied you. Voice, body, memories, close enough to fool even your mother. They infiltrated bunkers, whispered doubts, planted paranoia like landmines, turned teams against each other before a shot was ever fired. We started doing blood tests every 12 hours. Some teams stopped sleeping entirely. You could feel the fracture-lined spider-webbing under the surface. Even I started looking sideways at people I'd bled with. It wasn't just about fighting anymore. It was about not losing ourselves. But paranoia? It's like kindling. All it needs is one match. And the Vaedrith? Oh, they had matches. Grid 9 went dark on day 14. That was our home base. Our fortress. Our heart. No warning. Just a scream on the comms, and then static. We thought it was another mirror hit. Or an orbital strike. We prepped a recon team. What we found was worse than death. The walls were covered in blood, scrawled words. You bred this. Bodies were intact, but their minds? Gone. Scrambled like bad radio signals. Some were still alive, just empty. Eyes open, but no one behind them. It took me a while to understand what that meant. That message. You bred this. See, the Vadrith weren't just punishing us. They were blaming us for making them change, for making them feel something besides superiority. They called it contamination. We called it war. We regrouped in the Alps, the last functioning stronghold with full comms and shield coverage. We called it Iron Nest, a ring of mountains packed with guns, generators, and 1,000 pissed-off humans who had nowhere else to run. The fog never reached that high, but the tension did. Everyone was waiting for the next hit, the next whisper, the next betrayal. So we did what humans always do when things get bad. We told stories, not the old ones, about Earth, about peace, about how things used to be. No, we told new ones. About the girl who flew a shuttle into a forge station. About the man who killed a drone with a sledgehammer. About the twins who tricked a Vadrith assassin into walking into a minefield by pretending to be lost children. We told stories not to remember who we were, but to remind ourselves of what we're still becoming. But the truth is, none of us were the same anymore. Not really. We'd all changed. Because war doesn't just scar your body, it reprograms your soul. And that scared the Vadrith more than anything. Because we weren't breaking, we were adapting. On day 21, the sky turned red. Not metaphorically. Literally, crimson hue across the horizon. The upper atmosphere was burning, not from meteors, not from solar storms, from ships, big ones, city-sized, moving slow, casting shadows big enough to erase landscapes. The Vadrith called them harvesters. They weren't coming to kill us. They were coming to end us, strip the planet, salt the biosphere, flatten everything down to silence. Their final solution. Their apology wrapped in fire. And here's the thing that cracked me open. They didn't even hate us. Hate would have been easy to fight. No, this wasn't hatred. This was clinical. Like we were a failed experiment. Something they regretted allowing to live too long. Ash watched the sky from the nest, her hand shaking for the first time since I'd met her. We woke the gods, she said. No, I told her. We just reminded them what hell looks like. We had 3 days. That's how long it would take for the harvesters to enter low orbit. 3 days to stop them, or die trying. We didn't have fleets, or nukes, or time, but we had something else. Something no species, not even the Vadrith, could calculate for. Desperation weaponized. Gray came to me with a plan, half-drunk, fully insane. He wanted to hijack the Vadrith's psychic broadcast towers, the same ones they used to control their drones, and flood them with human thought, raw emotion, fear, memory, rage, love, all of it, like uploading our entire species' pain straight into their neural net. I asked what would happen. He just shrugged. Might overload them, might make them feel things they can't process, or might do nothing, but will go down swinging. I smiled. Let's break some gods. The next 72 hours were chaos. We scavenged gear, rewired towers, recorded hundreds of memory loops, births, funerals, songs, arguments, prayers, anything that made us us. We broadcast it all, a psychic scream from every continent. Billions of human moments turned into a virus, and we aimed it straight at the sky. The harvesters started reacting, slower, flickering, shifting erratically like they were fighting something inside their own systems. It wasn't a win, not yet, but it was a wound, a splinter in the divine, proof that even gods can glitch. That night, Ash sat beside me, staring at the fire. You think they'll ever stop? I thought about it. Then I shook my head. No. But maybe they'll start to understand. She smirked. And what exactly are we? I didn't hesitate. We're what happens when you back something into a corner and leave it nothing but its teeth. The next day, one of the harvesters fell, crashed into the ocean, took half the Pacific with it. We watched it burn from the nest, red light dancing across the sky. The gods were bleeding because we made them feel. And that was the beginning of their end. There's a moment in every war where the line between fighting and surviving just disappears. You stop checking the clock, stop counting ammo, stop waiting for backup that's never coming. You just keep going. And it's not bravery. It's not rage. It's refusal. A simple, bone-deep no. No, you don't get to take this. No, we don't die quiet. No, we're not done yet. That's where we were when the harvesters finally fell. Not collapsed, descended. These weren't ships anymore. They were judgments. burning monoliths the size of cities, draped in glowing armor and crawling with things that didn't need names. One landed in what used to be Mexico City, another in the Russian steppe. One drifted into orbit over Kenya and just hovered, watching. But the worst? The worst one came down right on top of us. Iron Nest, our last real stronghold, our hope, our memory, our home. And it was about to become a grave. We heard it before we saw it. The sky didn't just darken, it screamed. A sound like metal folding into itself. Like every bad dream you ever had, rolled into a thunderclap that cracked the air wide open. We ran to the edge of the nest and looked up. There it was, descending like a god made of stone and sorrow. Its surface shifted, alive, almost breathing, wrapped in tendrils of plasma and cables that reached for the ground like claws. Ash said it best. Jesus Christ, that thing's wearing our satellites. Panic at first. People running, screaming, tripping over themselves to get to shelters we knew wouldn't hold. The nest was strong, but it wasn't that strong. Nothing was. I grabbed the comms, trying to patch into the backbone. Nothing. Static. The fog was back too thick, buzzing, unnatural. It carried whispers now. Voices we recognized. Dead friends. Lost lovers. A girl we'd buried in week 2. She whispered my name. I didn't answer. By the time the harvester touched ground, half the nest was evacuated. The other half stayed. Some stayed to fight. Some stayed to hold the line. Some just stayed because they were tired, because they'd seen enough. Because sometimes, when you've lost everything, the only thing left to offer is defiance. And we were about to give it. Toma had survived Forge Prime, still limped from the plasma wound. He stood next to me, armor cracked, eyes tired. He looked at the thing and said, "That's not a ship." "What is it, then?" He shrugged. "A sermon." We knew what we had to do. Hit it, hurt it, stall it, give the rest of the world time to breathe, time to regroup, time to matter. So we split into teams. Gray took demolition. Ash stayed with the Cora, linked into the shield systems, ready to fry the nest before the harvester could crack it open like an egg. I led Echo Zero. 5 of us. Me, Toma, a medic named Lucy who had more scars than skin, a kid we called Wrench, because no one remembered his real name, and a former monk who'd stopped praying when the stars fell. We called him Quiet. The plan was chaos. No finesse. Just fire. We were going to plant a nuke. A real one. Old world tech. Right inside its core. Only problem? We didn't know where the core was. The harvester didn't have floors or walls like ships did. It had organs. Chambers that shifted. Pulsing corridors lined with biometal that screamed when you touched it. We entered through what looked like a hatch. It blinked. I blinked back. Inside, it was dark, but not empty. Things moved. Not creatures. Memories. Fragments of us. Projected. Warped. Twisted. A battlefield rendered from our pain. I saw Rena. I saw Mateo. They smiled. Then they turned and walked into the walls like ghosts. The harvester wasn't just a weapon. It was a mirror. It showed you what broke you, then tried to drown you in it. Wrench cracked first. We lost him in a chamber that echoed his father's voice. He dropped his gun and walked into the dark. Lucy followed him. Came back alone. Silent. Quiet, just whispered. Not his fault. Toma was the one who found the core. A beating heart, suspended in light. Surrounded by machines that hummed in keys I swear didn't exist on Earth. It wasn't just tech, it was sentience. A mind. Cold. Perfect. Merciless. I stepped forward with the nuke, arm shaking, pulse ragged, and it spoke, not in words, in feelings. I saw every mistake I'd ever made, every life I'd failed to save, every promise I'd broken. The weight of it crushed me to my knees. But then, I heard Cass's voice in my head, clear, defiant. "Get up. Damn it. You don't get to fall now." I stood. Toma covered me while I planted the charge. The core flinched. The entire chamber shuddered. The harvester knew. We ran, but only 3 of us made it out. Toma didn't follow. He stayed behind, made sure the core stayed locked down. I saw him through the hatch, bleeding, broken, smiling. He saluted me. Then the doors closed. Back at the nest, Ash was waiting. We scrambled into the Cora. Lucy threw herself into the pilot's seat. We launched just as the harvester started to crumble. The nuke went off. No fireball, no mushroom cloud, just a pulse. Blue, endless, like a star being born in reverse. The harvester collapsed in on itself, screaming, not out loud, but in every bone in our bodies. And then it was gone. Ash whispered, "One down." Across the globe, we watched the footage. Humans cheering in bunkers, kids pounding on tables, old men crying. Because if one of them could fall, they all could. But that's not the part one remember most. What I remember is the silence after. The way the nest stood still. The way Lucy walked away without saying a word. The way I sat by the wreckage of the harvester and thought, this is what defiance costs. It costs everything, but you pay it anyway. Because ashes don't beg, ashes burn. That day, the world didn't heal, but it didn't end either. And sometimes, that's enough. War has a voice, not the booming cannons or the crackling radios, not the shouting or the silence after a bullet whistles past your ear. No, war's real voice is something quieter, something deeper. It's the sound of someone refusing to stop fighting, even when everything screams they should. That's what this was. We were off Earth again, far beyond the sky's blue curve, past the haze of atmosphere, riding cold void in ships that smelled like sweat and rust and prayers. The target, the Citadel, a fortress orbiting a shattered moon, the Vadrith's brain, their command nexus, their heart of stone. Destroy it, end their war, or die trying. Echo Zero was back, smaller now, wounded, but alive. Me, Ash, quiet, Lucy, and Wrench. The Wrench was more ghost than man these days. We called it the fire sermon because every move we made felt like preaching to gods who already wrote us off as sinners. We approached the Citadel through a storm of fire. Missiles streaked past, ripping chunks out of our hull. Plasma blasts lit the black like fireworks gone mad. Ash flew the Cora like it was a living beast, each dodge, and weave a dance of desperation and skill. Her voice on the comm was steady, but I heard the tremor beneath. Hold tight, she said. We're almost there. The Citadel wasn't just a station. It was a labyrinth. Corridors that twisted in impossible ways. Rooms that defied physics. Walls that shifted like liquid glass. It was designed to trap you, to make you lose your way, to break your mind. We dropped in near the control core. That's when we saw them. The Watchers. Not Vadrith. Not exactly. Bigger, darker, hulking silhouettes dripping with void energy. Eyes like black stars. They moved slow, but every step shattered the ground beneath them. They didn't attack at first, just watched, as if curious. Lucy whispered, "They're waiting for something." I nodded. The war wasn't just about guns anymore. It was about will. Who would break first? Who would lose their soul first? We pushed forward, room after room, each one a test. Memories twisted into nightmares. Echoes of past defeats screamed from the walls. Wrench faltered. He dropped his rifle and collapsed. Quiet caught him before he hit the floor. Not here. Not now. When we reached the core chamber, it was chaos. Vadrith soldiers pouring in like black water. The Watchers stepping forward, each blow sending shockwaves. Ash launched countermeasures from orbit, lighting the Citadel up like a Christmas tree on fire. And we fought. I remember the sound of Lucy's screams as she fought off a Vadrith psychic. The crackle of my rifle as I covered her retreat. The heavy thunk when Quiet took down a Watcher with a seismic strike. Time stretched thin. Minutes felt like hours. Pain was a constant companion. The core itself was a massive crystalline structure, pulsing with energy that hummed in my bones. We had one shot, one chance to plant the warhead. I moved forward, heart pounding. Then the core spoke, not in words, in visions. Scenes of Vadrith worlds destroyed, families lost, a race forged in pain and blood, and at the center, a question: why do you fight? I didn't answer, because I didn't have to. My actions said it all. I planted the warhead. As the countdown began, the Citadel shook. The Watchers roared in rage. The Vadrith screamed in fury. Ash yelled, "Time to go." We ran. The explosion wasn't just light and sound. It was a sermon, a blazing sermon that cut through the void and lit the darkness on fire. The Citadel shattered. Fragments burned like stars as they fell into the black. Back on Earth, the message was clear. We were still here, still fighting, still burning, and the Vadrith knew it. That's what the fire sermon was. Not just an attack, but a declaration that humanity wasn't just surviving. We were becoming, and we were coming for them. You ever feel like the whole world's come crashing down? Like the sky is folding in on you, and every heartbeat is a countdown? That's what it was like on the last day. The day we decided we weren't going to die quietly. The harvesters were back. Not just one, but a fleet. Dark shadows eclipsing the stars. A storm that could swallow cities whole and still thirst for more. We were outgunned, outmanned, out of hope. But we had one thing left. Us. Iron Nest was gone, flattened to rubble. The place where we'd bled, where we'd cried, where we'd sworn to never give up, reduced to dust. We scattered, but we didn't break. We gathered at the last stronghold, a rocky outcrop on the edge of what used to be Siberia. We called it the Ember, because even in ash, there's fire. Our weapons were old, our numbers were thin, but our spirits? They burned like a wildfire that wouldn't be tamed. Ash was there, eyes blazing, hands steady at the helm of what little remained of the Cora. Lucy patched wounds no med bay could reach. Quiet whispered prayers to gods no one believed in anymore. And me? I stood in the middle of it all, the weight of 100 lost friends heavy on my shoulders. The sky cracked open. The harvesters descended, not slow this time, fast, relentless, unforgiving. The first wave hit like a hammer. Fire and steel and screams. The ground shook. The air filled with the scent of burnt flesh and ozone. We fought like hell, not because we wanted to win, because we refused to lose. Because to lose was to disappear. Toma was there, back from the edge, back with scars that told stories words never could. He stood beside me, his armor battered but his will unbroken. We moved as one. Every shot was a prayer, every explosion a shout into the void. The sky lit up with tracer fire and plasma. It was chaos. Beautiful, terrible chaos. Wrench fought with the fury of a cornered animal. Lucy kept us alive with steady hands and sharper nerves. Quiet moved like a shadow, silent but deadly. And Ash? She was the heartbeat of this madness. But then it happened. The harvester's core opened, a black hole of energy, sucking in everything. The ground cracked. The air tore. It was the end. I looked around, saw the faces of those still standing. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't about survival. It was about legacy. We charged, not as soldiers, not as victims, as humans. The final fight was brutal. Fists against metal, blood against circuits, heart against cold logic. I don't remember all of it, just flashes, a scream, a laugh, the warmth of Lucy's hand in mine. When the dust settled, the harvester was destroyed. The fleet retreated, the sky cleared. We were broken, but alive, and that's what made us unstoppable. Because no matter how many times they tried to snuff us out, we found the ember, and we let it roar. We weren't gods. We weren't perfect, but we were human. And that, more than anything, made us something the universe couldn't ignore.